Happy Monday, everybody. My name is Brandon Rosa, and welcome to another episode of the Xbox in 10 podcast, your weekly source of Xbox gaming news covered in around 10 minutes. Every Monday, this podcast covers new game releases, the previous week's gaming news, and we all learn an Xbox-related fun fact together. This show is on podcast services around the world, so please subscribe on your favorite and leave a review. Xboxin10.com, no numbers, is your quick source for links to all of our podcast destinations and social media profiles, which you can follow at Xboxin10. To start, let's talk game releases. The big game out last week was Journey to the Savage Planet. The games coming out this week are Zombie Army 4 Dead War, The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance Tactics, Monster Energy Supercross, the official video game 3, Maximum Football 2019, The Sims 4 Tiny Living, 7th Sector, and Monster Viator. The new games with gold for February 2020 have been announced, and they are TT Isle of Man from February 1st to the 29th on Xbox One, Call of Cthulhu from February 16th to March 15th on Xbox One, Fable Heroes from February 1st to the 15th on Xbox One and Xbox 360, and The Great Star Wars Battlefront from February 16th to the 29th on Xbox One and Xbox 360. A few games are leaving Game Pass soon, so play them while you can. These include Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Pumped BMX Pro, the Jackbox Party Pack 2, and two Xbox 360 titles, Rage and Disney Epic Mickey 2, The Power of Two. Now on to last week's biggest news stories, and we have 7 to cover this week. Number 1. Phil Spencer teases Xbox Studio The Initiative, doing new things and old things. Andrew Smith from IGN writes, after being officially announced at E3 2018, Xbox's The Initiative Studio has been rather quiet. With the new console generation seemingly only a few months away, Xbox head Phil Spencer recently met with the team at The Initiative and revealed that the first ever quadruple A studio was, quote, challenging themselves to do new things and old things in new ways, end quote. In a short Twitter tease, Spencer shared that he recently met with the Initiative Studio head Daryl Gallagher and head of Xbox Game Studios Matt Booty to discuss the future of the quadruple A development team. Unfortunately, Spencer's tweet is pretty vague, so we can only guess at what Gallagher's team is up to. Perhaps this means that the studio is working on bringing back, rebooting an old Xbox IP. Further, it could mean that it is hard to work on a new project that has ties to an old Xbox franchise, or the studio could be headed in a completely different direction. Either way, Spencer's tease will likely be a breath of fresh air for Xbox fans, as the initiative has been rather quiet over the past few months. Since its announcement almost 2 years ago, Gallagher has quietly assembled a talented team of experienced game developers. In August, Gallagher revealed that the studio had hired God of War's lead producer, Brian Westergaard, and Red Dead Redemption's writer, Christian Cantamessa. The studio has also added Sunset Overdrive director Drew Murray and Tomb Raider reboot director Dan Neerberger. With the team in place, Xbox fans have been longing to get a glimpse of what the initiative is working on. However, for now, it seems that fans will have to wait a bit longer. I am incredibly excited to see what the initiative is working on, and I hope they show it to us when they are ready and that the game isn't 5 years out. Hopefully they can give us a tease of the game maybe at this E3 and we can expect it within 2 years on the Xbox Series X. The current leading fan theory on the internet is that it might be a spiritual reboot of Perfect Dark. That doesn't do too much for me as I've never played a Perfect Dark game. It is on my list to do this year, but I really just want Xbox to have a quadruple A new game and or a franchise that could lead for the years to come. Sony absolutely crushes them in terms of exclusives, and I want that to be a proud thing for Xbox again. Number 2. PS5, Xbox Series X, quote, will blow people's minds, end quote, says EA. Jordan Gerblick at Games Radar writes, EA is apparently impressed with what they've seen from next-gen consoles, as the company recently called the PS5 and Xbox Series X substantially more powerful than current-gen consoles. Quote, the power of the new consoles is going to be substantially greater than existing consoles, end quote, said EA CFO Blake Jurgensen during an investor call via IGN. Quote, we could do a lot more with PS5 and Xbox Series X. Things we're doing will blow people's minds, end quote. Jurgensen was talking about EA's plans for next-gen hardware when he made the comments and hyped future innovation from EA and other video game companies. Apparently games will continue to evolve and entirely new genres will be born. Sony and Microsoft's respective next-gen consoles are both set to arrive holiday 2020, setting up a potentially difficult situation for gamers looking for the latest and greatest hardware. Both consoles are expected to support 8K resolution, ray tracing, and backwards compatibility, but there are some finer points to make about each offering. This story is clearly very obvious, but it is nice to see one of the biggest publishers out there in EA saying that it will blow people's minds with what they are able to do now and show us as consumers is very exciting. Number 3. Xbox boss still says frame rate is more important than resolution. Matt Kim at IGN writes, Phil Spencer is nothing if not consistent. For years, the Xbox boss has talked about his preference for frame rate over resolution, and Spencer sticks by this even at the dawn of a new console generation with the Xbox Series X. Quote, "The feel of the game is definitely something that we wanted to have more focus on, not just throwing more pixels on the screen," end quote, said Spencer in a new interview with Stevivor. These comments echo the ones he made in the past as far back as 2014. TechRadar reported around the time of the launch of the first Destiny, Spencer said that, quote, "Frame rate to me is significantly more important to gameplay than resolution and the mix of those two which brings the right art style and freedom," end quote. Frame rate is measured in frames per second. It is the frequency in which a frame of images is refreshed per second. Developers tend to try and at least achieve 30 frames per second as a threshold. However, a lower frame rate could lead to a big input lag and could impact gaming, especially games that require quick reflexes. To me, frame rate really depends on the type of game I'm playing. If it's a story-based game, I usually prioritize resolution, but for a shooter or action game, I prioritize frame rate. So disappointing for games on the Xbox Series X that do not output in 60 frames per second, and the first one that comes to mind, of course, is Destiny 2. Very disappointing. Number 4, Wasteland Remastered release date announced, coming to PC and Xbox Game Pass soon. James O'Connor at GameSpot writes, "Wasteland Remastered is coming to PC and Xbox One next month. The 1987 original is getting a visual overhaul while retaining much of the original game's aesthetic, and you'll be able to check it out on February 25th, 2020. The game is coming to PC via Steam, the Windows Store, and GOG, and it's also coming to Xbox One. Better yet, it'll be included with Xbox Game Pass, so if you're a subscriber, you'll be able to check it out at no additional cost. Again, this is a game I'm going to check out in anticipation for Wasteland 3 this year, so it's cool that it's coming to the best subscription in gaming in the Xbox Game Pass. Number 5, a story for me. Sounds like Capcom will stick to first person for Resident Evil 8. Tom Phillips at Eurogamer writes, Capcom's unannounced but inevitable Resident Evil 8 will retain the first-person gameplay of the predecessor, Resident Evil 7, according to a new report on the project from fan site Biohazard Cast via YouTube channel Residents of Evil. It also tallies with what Eurogamer has heard independently of the game from sources close to publisher Capcom. Resi 7's first-person viewpoint being kept in Resi 8 is something of a surprise, several years after the former's oddball virtual reality origins. The shift to first person was a huge departure for the series and one which Capcom has steered clear of implementing in its recent Resident Evil remakes, but it also makes sense as a way to clearly delineate the two series branches Capcom is currently developing, as remakes such as Resi 2 and 3 revive the series' origins from nostalgic fans, while 7 and 8 offer a more experimental future. I loved Resident Evil franchise, and I loved Resident Evil 7. I cannot wait to see what they do with Resident Evil 8. Number 6. Metro Exodus Sam's Story DLC details revealed, releases February 11th. Brandon Lowry at WindowsCentral.com writes, Developer 4A Games announced on Twitter and on the Metro Exodus website that the next Metro Exodus DLC, Metro Exodus Sam's Story, is going to be released on February 11th on the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, PC, and Stadia platforms. No details on price are currently known, though around $20 is a good guess, given the $25 price of the Metro Exodus Expansion Pass and the $8 price of the first expansion, Metro Exodus: The Two Kernels. In addition to the release date, 4A Games also provided some details about what the expansion pass will be about. As the title suggests, the DLC will have the player take control of Sam, an American character from previous Metro games, as well as the main story of Metro Exodus. Sam was trapped in Russia when the in-universe nuclear war started, and though he's stuck with his Moscow-born comrades to survive for many years, he now wants to return home to his family now that the world seems to be recovering from nuclear devastation. This is one franchise that I've always had my eye on, unfortunately never tried. I own the Redux collection, and again, on the backlog, hopefully I'll have time this year. And number 7, Phantasy Star Online 2 beta kicks off on Xbox One in February. Michael McWhorter at Polygon writes, Phantasy Star Online 2 is finally coming stateside, and Sega will give fans a brief taste of the online role-playing game the weekend of February 7th with a closed beta test. That beta test will be available on Xbox One starting February 7th at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, and will wrap up on Sunday, February 9th at 12 a.m. Pacific Time. Closed beta for Phantasy Star Online 2 will feature fully localized English language texts and voices, Sega said, and players who participated in the beta will have their progress carry over to the full game, which is slated to launch on Xbox One in spring 2020. For fans of the long-running game that have been on Xbox and not been able to play, here is the time to finally try it for yourselves. As always, we end the show with a fun fact about Xbox, and this one is about the original Xbox. Credit to Joe Screbbles at Games Radar. The original Xbox's hard drive was a source of contention. Seamus Blackley apparently threatened to quit if the hugely expensive hard drive inside the machine was removed, but he also had to promise to stop complaining about the enormous Duke controller, which he despised. Thank God Seamus Blackley fought for hard drives inside the original Xbox, as I can't even imagine having to deal with memory cards anymore. Remember those days? They were awful. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Xbox in 10 podcast, your weekly source of Xbox gaming news covered in around 10 minutes. If you like the show, please subscribe on your favorite podcast service, share with your friends, and follow on all social media at Xbox in 10. This past week, I played a few matches of Call of Duty Blackout with my friends and we got destroyed, followed up by some Rocket League. Still been trying to marathon through Star Wars The Clone Wars, but I want to get back to gaming before Ori and the Will of the Wisps is released so I can play Ori and the Blind Forest all the way through. My name is Brandon Rosa. You can follow me on Xbox at Brosa93. I hope you all have a great week and keep on gaming.